Support for WUWM podcasts comes from University School of Milwaukee, fulfilling a values-based mission of developing learners, fostering leaders, and preparing citizens for pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. More information at usm.org/mission.
From 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR, this is Lake Effect. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Today, we'll hear the story of the first Juneteenth celebration in Milwaukee almost 55 years ago.
I said, Jan, I think we're onto something. But at that point, I don't think either me or her felt like Juneteenth was going to happen anymore.
We'll get a preview of the annual Oneida Pow Wow coming up at the end of the month. Then we'll speak with singer, songwriter, and musician Brandy Clark ahead of her performance in Milwaukee.
I definitely started out more country. And I think what happened to me was that Americana really embraced me in a way that country didn't completely.
Plus, we'll have the latest bar talk with cocktail writer Robert Simonson to share some local drink recommendations. All that's coming up on Lake Effect. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Thanks for joining us. June 19th, or Juneteenth, commemorates the day in 1865 when enslaved Black Americans in Galveston, Texas, learned that they had been freed from bondage. It was 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. Juneteenth became a federal holiday in 2021 and a City of Milwaukee holiday 1 year later. But Milwaukee has been celebrating Juneteenth for much longer, 55 years. It's thanks in large part to community leader Margaret Henningsen and Northcott Neighborhood House, which put on the first Juneteenth celebration in 1971. Henningsen says she learned about Juneteenth in a conversation with her grandmother during a family trip to Georgia when she was a teenager. Henningsen told WUWM race and ethnicity reporter Taryn Powell that message came full circle for her when she began working for Northcott in the 1970s.
So fast forward to 1971. I'm now working at Northcott as the head of their Head Start program and as a community organizer. I'm also serving on the board of Northcott Neighborhood House. And Northcott Neighborhood House was part of a whole system around the country of neighborhood houses that were programs that were designed to help underserved communities. And the organization that ran all the neighborhood houses around the country was primarily people who were white. But there was a man named Lucius Walker who came here often. He was the first executive director of Northcott. He was amazing. And I want to kind of say maybe he was one of my early role models and mentors. We were having a staff meeting. There were about 17 people in that room that worked at Northcott. And our executive director at that time was Jimmy Givings, who was like a mentee of Lucius Walker's. And he said, so it's a shame that we see all these people fleeing. 3rd Street used to be full of businesses. Gimbel Schuster's was there on, anchoring this one corner. And there were all kinds of other businesses. Anything you wanted, you went to 3rd Street first and you could find it. It was mostly white business people. The area around 3rd Street was all homeowners on both sides. And those people were fleeing the neighborhood in droves. So Jimmy said, what we need to discuss today is what can we do to make 3rd Street a more vibrant street, to engage our people in participating in what's happening here in the city of Milwaukee, and continue our fight for what's rightfully ours. All of a sudden, the incident with my grandmother just popped up in my head. So I said, my grandmother told me one time that there was some kind of document out there that said we were free and that people celebrate that. Does anybody in here know anything about Juneteenth? Not one hand went up. Not one. Not even the 2 people who were from the South. I said, why don't we have a Juneteenth celebration? So after I explained what it was, Jimmy said, wow, that's a great idea. He said, is it like a festival? I said, well, I'm going to have to do some research because I haven't thought about this since I was 14, maybe 13 or 14 years old. Isn't that something? I'm getting goosebumps talking about this. How that just popped up in my head all of a sudden. Why don't you have a Juneteenth celebration? And boy, oh boy, was I shocked when I started looking it up. I asked my parents. Nope, they never heard of it. My grandparents, nope, they never heard of it. From Tennessee, of all places. And then I asked a friend of mine, she was living in Texas. She said, oh, Juneteenth. She said, yeah. She said, girl, in Galveston, they celebrate that every year. I said, can you find me somebody from Galveston to talk to? So I was trying to pull all this information together so I could go back to the next staff meeting and say, this is what we have to do. So when I got back, I said, there's only a very few cities that celebrate, and Galveston, Texas probably celebrates it more than anybody else. So I said, I figured I need about 5 or 6 of y'all to form this committee with me to try to have a Juneteenth celebration here in Milwaukee. Silence, no hands went up. Finally, one of my close friends from Northcott, Jan Kemp, she said, oh, Margaret, where do you come up with all these crazy ideas? But she said, I'll help you, I'll volunteer.
What did your research look like?
We could only find a few places we knew of that were actually outwardly celebrating Juneteenth. Some people from the South who were familiar with it said that a lot of Juneteenth celebrations were sort of incognito. You know, it was a church picnic, I'm making quotation marks, or a family reunion. But very few people who celebrated Juneteenth who were from the South actually said it was a celebration of their freedom. And I think it had a lot to do with the conversation I had with my grandmother, where she said black people down there knew they weren't free, but they weren't going to throw it in the white folks' face, you know. And I've often thought about her wishing she was still alive and could see how we've progressed, you know, that we outwardly were not afraid anymore. We would march and demonstrate and do whatever we needed to do. So the first year, it was all, and really the second year, it was 99% word of mouth and people donating stuff. And Jan's husband, he had a lot of contacts in the music industry. He reached out to people in Milwaukee and said, on June 19th, can you come down on 3rd Street, bring your band or your singer or whatever? So we had some entertainment, but it was all local. And when Northcott started doing this, we were on 3rd Street, which then became King Drive. We had to go to older people, which were almost all white, except for Ben Johnson. And the county, same thing. The mayor's office, same thing. Trying to get them to understand the significance of Juneteenth and why we wanted to close 3rd Street so we could have this celebration undisturbed. So we met with those people and they all said they'd get back to us, right? By now, it's like 5 days before Juneteenth. We just kept going forward. We told people, yeah, come on, everything's good. Bring your tables, your chairs, your food. People had grills the first couple of years. It was just grills. Their own grills, and they brought their own food. And then there was 2 black radio stations. And Dr. Bob was at one of them, and O.C. White was at the other one. Those are names that'll be familiar only to a few people that are listening to this. But anyway, they did come forward and help us. They reached out to some of the entertainers that they knew to see if they could get them. They couldn't, but the fact that they reached out to them was a good thing. So on the first day, I'd say between 2,000 and 3,000 people showed up. That's all. And when we first got down there at about 6 o'clock in the morning, just Jan and I and a few other people from Northcott to help people get set up, it started raining. And I started crying, and Jan said, don't cry, Margaret. She said, the rain's gonna stop. She got out in the middle of the street and started doing what she called the no rain dance. And she had no rhythm, and Jan could not dance. She's one of the few black people I knew couldn't dance.
Oh, no.
So she had fun there. And then about a half an hour later, it stopped raining. So, you know, we were going up to the corner trying to put up these barriers, and a bus was coming down the street. So I ran up to the bus and I knocked on the window. He was at the stoplight. And I said, the street is closed. He said, no, it didn't. He said, we didn't get no orders the street was closed today. I said, oh, my God. So I ran over to Jan. I said, did your friend ever call you back about the street closures? Because we gave assignments to people, and then we just let them run with it. We had to find Ben Johnson, bless his heart, and 2 other people we knew who were with the county board. And Ben was with all the people and say, we need 3rd Street closed, like right now. So we get through the day, and it went till midnight. They didn't change the time until there was some trouble. And when you stop and think about it, that festival's been there 55 years, and we've only had any kind of what I would describe bad trouble like the shooting we had once or twice in 55 years. But mostly, at one time, the peak attendance was about 100,000 people.
How do you think the event stuck with people?
At the end of the day, it was probably about almost 1 o'clock in the morning, and me and Jan were sitting on the curb. I think we were in shock, that everything had gone beautifully. There weren't a gazillion people there, but the people who were there were having so much fun. It was like a big family reunion. Yeah. And so we were sitting on the curb talking, and Jan was looking down towards Walnut. It was about 4 or 5 young black males coming down the street. I said, Jan, nothing's going to happen. She said, I hope not. So they stopped at us. And I was like, oh, God, don't let me be wrong. And one of them said, did y'all have anything to do with this event today? Jan nodded her head, yes. And I said, yes, we did. Why? And he put his hand out. And the guy who was standing next to him put his hand out for Jan. And they helped us stand up. He said, we want to hug you. And the guy who started the conversation said, are you going to do this again? Jan was like shaking her head, no. And I said, yes. I said, can I have your name and phone number? Because we need to put you on the committee for next year. When they start walking away, Jan looked at me and she said, don't you start crying, because them tears were just streaming down my face. I said, Jan, I think we're onto something. But at that point, I don't think either me or her felt like Juneteenth was going to happen anymore. But I could not stop thinking about it. What if we did this? What if we did that? What if we made this a bigger event? What if it was more informational, educational, more food, more sponsors? What if we could raise money to help our kids go to college? We just start talking about all these different things. By the time we left that curb, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning. Me and her just sitting there brainstorming, having a ball. That's why we did Juneteenth. We were trying to get people to see that our community is not what they think it is, that it's good. We want all of our people, including the black people, to see how wonderful we are. My heart, everything, my thanks goes to Northcott. Because every executive director they had said, okay, to continuing to make Juneteenth happen. That's how it got to be 55 years.
What do you hope for the future of Juneteenth celebrations in Milwaukee or elsewhere?
There's something everybody should know. Not that we shouldn't celebrate the 4th of July, because I love the 4th of July, the fireworks and the camaraderie and all of that. But I also understand what it symbolizes. And I feel like Juneteenth is a better representation or symbol of what it means to be free. And I would like for the whole focus of Juneteenth to get larger and larger until black people do feel like they're completely free.
That was Margaret Henningsen, a pioneer of the Juneteenth celebration here in Milwaukee. She spoke with WUWM race and ethnicity reporter Taryn Powell. Milwaukee's 55th annual Juneteenth celebration is this Friday. Lake Effect is available as a podcast so you can listen when you like. Find it wherever you get your podcasts, then subscribe, download, and listen on demand. In about 15 minutes, we'll get recommendations for cocktails to try at local bars and restaurants. But first, we'll tell you about the upcoming Oneida Pow Wow and help you plan a trip to see the drum and dance competition. That's coming up on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. You're listening to Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. The annual Oneida Pow Wow is coming up at the end of June. The powwow draws 10,000 visitors to Oneida to experience traditional music and dancing. Visitors can soak in Oneida culture from native food and artist vendors at the 3-day event. For this month's Wandering Wisconsin, Lake Effect's Becky Mortensen helps you plan a trip to the Oneida Pow Wow and learn what you can see and do there. She's joined by Oneida Nation's Marketing and Tourism Director Michelle Anderson Danforth and Amanda Weibel from Travel Wisconsin.
So the 52nd annual Oneida Pow Wow is coming up at the end of June, but this tradition dates back a lot further than just 52 years. So Michelle, can you talk about the origins of the Oneida Pow Wow?
Actually, I went back and did a little research, and the first powwow actually was in 1840. And we had a chief, his name was Daniel Bread, and he actually kind of adopted it as a celebration to celebrate Independence Day. And for a long time, they would do the celebration over the 4th of July weekend. It was a whole weekend event. And then it kind of went away for a while. And then the powwow ended up resurging in the 1970s. We actually would host it at our local civic center. And then eventually it moved up the road to the Norbert Hill Center, where it is actually goes on today.
All right, and this event will kick off with a grand entry. Can you describe what that will be like?
Sure. Well, for the Oneida Powwow, which happens on the 26th, 27th, and 28th, on the Friday night, our grand entry is at 7. On Saturday, it's at 1 o'clock, and then 7 o'clock, and then Sunday, it's at noon. And basically, grand entry is this spectacular part of our powwow where all the dancers come into the dance arena, and they're led off by the veterans. We have our royalty. We have lots of visiting royalty from different Native communities from across the country. And then all of the head dancers and all the dancers file in. And what's really spectacular is we get over like 450, 500 dancers, and they're all in this central dance arena. So the people that come to visit, it's a great opportunity to see all the different style dancers, all the different style regalia that everyone wears. And it's a really great time to be there.
So a few hundred people are participating in that grand entry. So talk a bit about what goes into the planning and preparation for this event each year.
So we get roughly, I want to say we get closer to like between 450 and 600 dancers annually that register to dance. Some are not doing the competition part of it. So if you're a dancer and you're on they call it the powwow trail. So I'm going to go to our powwow, and then I might go to one in Minnesota, and then I might go to one down in Kansas. It takes a lot to really prepare for the entire year because it's everything from the regalia that you wear. And if you get up close and personal to some of our dancers, like the beadwork is just exquisite. And it is just these amazing designs, and it's a lot of beadwork. So doing all the preparation for not only traveling to the powwows, but then also prepping yourself for being in competition, it's literally, it's year long. It's a year-long process. So on the tourism side, we literally start planning as soon as the powwow's over. So within 2 weeks, we're having a meeting on, well, what could we do better? How could we improve our guest experience? It's everything from the bleachers to the giant LED screens to all of our head staff. It's everything, and it's a very intricate balance between having really good policies and procedures and having everything laid out to the actual execution of the powwow. I can say without a doubt we have one of the best powwows in the Midwest.
Absolutely. You mentioned the competition aspect of the powwow with over $160,000 in prize money up for grabs. So can you share how that works?
The $160,000, it's a lot of money, but we have a lot of different types of dance categories. So what happens after grand entry, and then they'll do a few exhibitions so people can see the different styles of dance, is that we do break into these categories. So it may be men's traditional, men's grass, smoke dancing, fancy dancing. So we have all these different styles for both men and even the women. So there's different styles. And what we do is we break each of those categories apart. And so we may have where it's senior men's traditional, and you will only see them dance. And then it'll be, just the men's grass or just the men's fancy dance. And what's really cool about it is that you really get to see each of the style of dance while you're there hanging out, having some food, or hanging out with your family. So that part of it is really is pretty spectacular for visitors who want to come to the powwow.
When people arrive at the powwow, there are vendors. Can you share a little bit more about what people can check out there?
When a visitor actually comes to the powwow, what's really cool is that when they walk into the powwow grounds, there are over 40 craft and jewelry, all different types of vendors. We also have a wide variety of food vendors also that people can eat at. Specifically, my favorite is I love the jewelry. I can't go a year without buying some sort of piece of jewelry. So when I get on the grounds on the Friday, and of course we're working, but I'll go and do a quick peruse. But there's just so much to see, and there's so much to walk through. I mean, even the food vendors, I love the food vendors. So, because for us, we're running around like crazy, so you have to grab food when you can. So my favorite, though, is the Indian taco. I love the Indian taco. I know I'm not supposed to eat the Indian taco, but I still love it, and I will eat it during that weekend.
Okay, besides Indian taco and jewelry, do you have a favorite part of the powwow?
So my favorite part of the powwow, honestly, is watching the people and the kids run around, and everyone is so happy. For my entire life, I have gone to the powwow pretty much every single year. And so on our grounds, we have a nice hill that you can sit on and bring your blanket and you can watch. So my grandmother, my aunt, my dad, they all sat on the hill. And so for me, I'm excited about my role with the powwow, because I was like, you know what, someday I'm going to be an older lady and I'm going to be sitting on that hill watching. And I'm excited because I just don't think the powwow it's not going to go anywhere. It's a staple in our community, and we support it 100%.
I love that. Okay, Amanda, I'm going to turn to you. There are some other ways to experience and learn about Native culture in the area. What else would you recommend people check out on a visit?
Yes, there really are so many opportunities. It's going to be easy to add one more. You'll likely want to add many more tribal tourism activities to your itinerary. Certainly, one to check out is the Oneida Nation's new cultural center that opened just this June. The name in Oneida means precious waters, and Michelle was helping me with this, so we'll see how I can do. It's the Ganeganolo Cultural Center, which means precious waters in Oneida.
So Ganeganolu. Ganeganolu. Say that 10 times.
It's such a significant expansion from the previous museum. There's so much to check out, lots of new artifacts that are on display, amazing interactive exhibits where kids or kids at heart can touch and explore. And they also have a really beautiful community gathering space and fantastic gift shop. Another option, if you want something hands-on, consider a visit to Aquaqua Farm. The owners, Becky and Steve Webster, are so welcoming, and they really started this farm from the ground up as a way to preserve and share traditional heirloom Haudenosaunee ingredients and foodways. They have a number of events planned for the summer. They've got great classes in skills like corn pounding and berry basket making, and they have these open house community drop-in events. So check out their website and social media for lots more details. And if you're in the area on a Thursday, make sure you check out the Oneida Farmers Market. They have over 35 vendors, and you can find a wide variety of produce, flowers, crafts, food. Michelle told me that the local honeykeeper and kettle corn can't be missed, so you might find her in line on those stops.
Nice. Any other summertime recommendations for places to check out in the area?
Certainly. If you're a golfer, make sure you check out Thornberry Creek at Oneida. They have 27 championship holes. The golf course is so beautifully groomed. And, Wisconsin is home to so many great golf courses, but this really is a standout course in northeastern Wisconsin. Another fun idea is to grab some breakfast or lunch to go from off the trail. It's a Native American owned cafe that serves gourmet sandwiches, wraps, salads, cold pressed juices, and more. And for a really fun picnic spot, swing by the Buffalo Overlook. It's where you can see the Oneida Nation's herd of more than 150 buffalo.
All right, Michelle, if someone has never attended a powwow before, what is something you'd want them to know about the Oneida Pow Wow?
To come early. So if grand entry is at 7 p.m., you probably want to get there about like 6 o'clock because there is traffic. We do get a large inflow of visitors that are coming, and definitely bring a blanket with you. We have a hill where you can throw your blanket down and sit and watch. And then we also have bleachers. So we have like a lot of seating. We've been working on that over the years to make sure that there's ample seating for everyone who wants to come out. The other thing is, like, if you want to take a picture with a dancer, just ask them. That's one of the things that we do ask is that you're respectful for the dancers, but they love getting their pictures taken. The other thing is right before grand entry, we always do this opening prayer, and they ask people or honor songs, and they ask people not to record during those times and to be very respectful, because we always have elders who are giving us these great words of encouragement. And so we always want to be really mindful that we're being very respectful for them and not to be on our phone. But other than that, it's like, come, enjoy. There's food. There's lots of things to buy and experience. And it's just a really great experience, something that you'll remember for many years to come.
All right. All very good advice. Well, Michelle and Amanda, thank you so much for joining me for Wandering Wisconsin.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you very much for having us. I appreciate this experience.
Michelle Anderson Danforth is the Marketing and Tourism Director for Oneida Nation. Amanda Weibel is the Communications Officer for Travel Wisconsin. They both joined Lake Effect's Becky Mortensen for this month's Wandering Wisconsin. You can find more travel recommendations in our home state at wuwm.com. For cocktail writer and author Robert Simonson, Wisconsin has always held its own in the cocktail world, even when he moved away to be a writer in New York City for decades. Simonson recently returned home to Milwaukee, where he's continuing to write about food, drink, history, and regional culture. As a part of this exploration, he joins us on Lake Effect for a new regular segment called Bar Talk to share some of the most memorable drinks he's had at local bars in the past month. Robert, welcome back to Lake Effect.
Glad to be here.
So for this month's Bar Talk, we're going to start with something on the rocks. It's a new rye whiskey for Kegel's Inn called Hidden Pouches. What is the story behind this special blend?
Yes, this surprised me. I actually went to Kegel's for a totally different reason. They have those wonderful murals there on the wall, and they were doing an exhibit of the German immigrant who painted those murals. They found out who he was, and they got some of his paintings and assorted them. It was advertised as a kind of a wine event, but at the end they broke out this rye. It's called Hidden Pouches. It's a special rye. They only sell it at Kegel's. They only pour it at Kegel's. So Kegel's, as you probably know, started as a speakeasy back in the 1920s. And when you went in there, you could get some rye whiskey, apparently. They call it Hidden Pouches because Anna Kegel, who was the wife of the founder, John Kegel Sr., she had an apron, and she sewed in hidden pouches into the apron, and in the pouches were flasks full of rye. So if you knew to ask, you knew to ask. So they're honoring that tradition. The rye was made for the Kegel family at the Dancing Goat Distillery, that's near Madison. It was very important to them that they get a rye that was made from Wisconsin-grown rye. It comes in at 54.8% alcohol, so it's a strong rye. You can only buy it there. It's $75, pretty steep, but that's pretty common for this kind of thing.
Special edition kind of bottle.
Yeah, special edition. They have their own edition of like beer at this point, so they've just added rye. So we actually were there when they launched it on May 20th. It was a complete surprise. It had not been advertised. And we quickly went to the bar, and we asked the bartender to make a Manhattan with it. And it was a very good Manhattan.
Excellent. And I'm sure the rye is a bit better quality than what would have been served during Prohibition.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah, so that's a good reason to go to Kegel's outside of the classic visit for the murals and the food
Yes.
and the culture of the place.
New reason to go.
Yes. And next up could be a great field trip if any listeners haven't been here yet at Il Cervo. It's on the rooftop bar at the Trade Hotel. And I understand they have an Italian twist kind of on the old-fashioned.
They do. It's an Italian restaurant. It's a rooftop restaurant. And because of that, they have an Italian twist on every single cocktail on the menu. And the first cocktail on the menu is called Antico Spirito, which sounds very exotic, and you expect it to be like an original cocktail they came up with using European ingredients. But it turns out to just be a clever spin on that good old Wisconsin staple, the old-fashioned. And what they're doing with it is they're using Johnny Drum bourbon, gum syrup, Angostura bitters, and instead of like the Squirt or 7-Up that people put on top of their old fashions here, they use a high-end grapefruit soda made by Q, which is a company out in Brooklyn. The garnish is a cherry and an olive and an orange peel, so you get like the best of all garnishes there.
Sweet and savory toppings for
That's
everyone.
right. It's elegant, it's light, it's refreshing, it's kind of a classier, more precise version of a Wisconsin old-fashioned.
I like that. I like to try old-fashions at different places to see their spin on it, and that sounds like something I'd enjoy. And Il Cervo Italian place also makes its own limoncello, but there's also an NA drink called Spritz al Sambuco.
Yes, they have a good selection of non-alcoholic drinks there. This one, the Spritz al Sambuco, is kind of a twist on the Hugo Spritz, which is a spritz that was invented in Austria about, 40 years ago, and it's always been popular there. Lately, you've been seeing it in the United States a lot more, and it's grown in popularity. And it is on the menu at Il Cervo. But if you feel like you don't want to drink that night, they have a non-alcoholic version, this one. And it's made with non-alcoholic elderflower liqueur, which actually exists and is produced by Giffard, which is a French company, and Lyre's Dry Secco, which is kind of like a non-alcoholic sparkling white wine. I've had it. It's one of the better non-alcoholic things out there. They top that with soda water and a lot of mint. Comes in a big wine glass, bright and refreshing.
Absolutely. And next up, we're going to go to a grocery store, but there's a good reason for that because Groppy's in Milwaukee's Baby neighborhood is more than a place to get your shopping done. And they have a bar. Mostly people go for a after-work wine or beer, but they do have cocktails as well.
They do. They have this wonderful bar in the back of Groppy's. And it's always crowded, usually. And people are drinking wine and beer because they have a great selection of wine and beer there. But they also have a cocktail list. It's not very long. It's only like 5 drinks long. What's nice about it is they use a lot of local ingredients. We tried a few while we were there recently, and our favorite was this nice springy summery drink called Oh Look, a Strawberry. And it is a highball made with bourbon, heirloom pineapple Amaro, which is a local product, another local product, Bitter Cube All Day Bitters, orange bitters. Then there's ginger, lemongrass simple syrup, fresh strawberries, lemon juice, and ginger beer. It's sort of like a drink, a modern classic that was invented in San Francisco about 20 years ago called the Kentucky Buck. It's in that area, but it's definitely worth it. If you've ever been there, it's always busy. So if you're ordering this cocktail, which has a lot of ingredients, you may wait a little bit, but I think it's worth the wait. The bourbon comes through just enough. The lemongrass kind of hangs in the back. The pineapple and strawberry are the stars. It's a perfect drink for the hot weather months.
Yeah, it sounds really delicious and refreshing. Next up, we're going kind of near Groppy's, in fact, to Good Kind, which I can attest also has some great cocktails. What's your most recent favorite from there? Because people can just go for a drink. You don't necessarily need to have a dinner reservation, right?
It's a wonderful space, and it has this great bar, and you can just go for drinks. You can eat at the bar, too. They've always had good cocktails, and that's because of bar manager Katie Rose, who is well known in the area. So one thing people might not know, certainly I did not know when I went recently, is that there's an after-dinner menu. It's a separate menu from the regular menu, and it has different drinks on it. And I was attracted to this one called the Cloud Watcher. I love a good contemplative after-dinner sipper. And the ingredients in this really spoke to me. There was Spanish brandy, chamomile grappa liqueur, Cardamaro Amaro, which is an Amaro which has a base of Moscato, and then it's infused with Cardoon and Roman thistle. And then a pear liqueur made with cognac. So it's drawing on all these ingredients from France, Italy, Spain. It's kind of a sophisticated international sipper.
Sounds delicious. And lastly, we're going to head up to Janesville to one of, well, now the oldest Chinese restaurant in the entire United States, the Cozy Inn. This might not be a place people might think of for a drink recommendation, right?
That's right. That's right. It recently became, like you say, the oldest Chinese restaurant in the United States because the former title owner in Montana closed, like after more than 120 years. The Cozy Inn's been there since like 1927. It's on the second floor above a kind of an Irish pub, and walking into it is like walking into a time capsule. You're just in another era. It's only been run by two families, and the family running it now has run it for a very long time. They're very nice people. So as is often common with Chinese restaurants of that era, they have a list of tropical drinks. Things like Singapore Sling or Mai Tai, but very creamy, frothy things that usually come out in these bright neon colors. Now, these are typically not very good drinks. They're usually made with like bottom shelf liquors and sour mix and stuff like that. But I was attracted to one particular drink on this menu because I'd never heard of it. It was called Susie Wong's Special Drink. Now, before I started writing about cocktails, I used to write about theater. I wrote about theater for about 20 years. So that just rang a bell in my head because I figured it was a reference to this play from 1958, The World of Susie Wong, which was a big hit. And then it was turned into a movie. And so I asked it, like, could this be so? And the owner, Tom Fong, said, yep, that is what it's named after, and you're the first person who ever noticed that. So I felt very proud of myself after that. The drink was created by his wife, Amanda Fong, who told me she had been making it for almost 40 years. Now, usually with these old tiki drinks, the tradition is that they're a secret, and they're not going to tell you the recipe. So all she did was give me a laundry list of what's in it. She said there was white rum, Myers dark rum, orange curacao, grenadine, orange juice, lemon juice, pineapple juice. I don't have the ratios. I'm sure she left some stuff out because then I could make it at home. But I was so surprised at how delicious this was. It far surpassed any of the other drinks that we tried that night.
I really like that. It's a good reason to go to this place if you've never been, just for the sake of its history in Wisconsin and the U.S., and then get a pleasantly surprising drink afterwards, too.
You're not going to be able to order this drink anywhere else in the entire United States.
Excellent insider tip. Well, for today, Robert, thank you so much for joining me for Bar Talk for June.
My pleasure.
Robert Simonson is a cocktail writer, 2-time James Beard Award nominee, and author of 7 books on cocktails. He joined me to share some memorable Milwaukee area drinks for this month's Bar Talk. We'll take one more break, and when we return, we'll speak with singer-songwriter and musician Brandy Clark ahead of her performance in Milwaukee. Keep listening to Lake Effect on WUWM. This is Lake Effect on Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Brandy Clark has been working in music as a singer and songwriter for over a decade. Her songs blend country, folk, and Americana with honest lyrics and standout melodies. As a songwriter and collaborator, her songs have been recorded by Sheryl Crow, Miranda Lambert, Reba McEntire, Casey Musgraves, and many more. Clark debuted as a solo artist in 2013 and has since released 3 albums, including her latest self-titled album in 2023, which was produced by Brandi Carlile. Over the years, Clark has shifted from country to now fully embracing Americana. She'll be performing in Milwaukee on June 22nd at the Argo, but ahead of that, Clark joins me now to talk about her music, starting with where her love of country music came from.
My musical taste comes from my grandparents and my mom. I was really lucky. I was talking earlier today about how the first, I think, 5 years of my life, we didn't have cable TV. And so it was just music, which was a great thing for me because I do love TV. So the fact that it came in a little later probably instilled music a little deeper in me than it would have been.
What were some of the musicians or songs you inherently were drawn to that influenced your listening style, your own musicality?
You know, it was a lot of country music. I mean, my grandma would say there were 2 kinds of music, country and Western. And one of my first memories of her actually was she went to a Loretta Lynn concert. And my parents were listening to what was on country radio at that point in time, which would have been the early 80s, which was sort of it was a pop country phase. It was like Ronnie Millsap and Barbara Mandrell and Steve Warner. Those were some people I remember early on. But my grandparents, they were listening to like Merle Haggard and Loretta, George Jones, Don Williams, which Don was on the radio at that point. That's fresh in my mind because I just played a Don Williams tribute at the Opry, and I remember all that music. But I think, I grew up in a time where it was not only great singers, it was great songs. And then, my mom always listened to like Broadway show tunes, which I ended up doing a musical. I think that has a lot to do with it. And, my mom just always really liked great music. And she always liked things that were a little removed from the mainstream. Like two artists I remember her being into before the rest of the world even knew about them were Alison Krauss, Shania Twain, Shelby Lynn, Katie Lang. Like she was into those artists on their first albums.
Yeah, and with your grandma saying, there's country versus Western, I want to get into that a little bit because it reminds me about your song Northwest on your most recent album. And people don't automatically think about the West Coast as a hub for country, Americana musicians to stem from. Perhaps they just think of the punk scene out of Seattle, right? But what's special about this area for you and how it influences your work?
Yeah, I think for me, what a lot of people forget about is there's the whole Bakersfield movement of Buck Owens and Merle. And so that's very West Coast. But for me, where I'm from, I think the values of where I come from are represented in country and Americana music. I mean, I grew up in a very blue collar, hardworking, small town. To me, that's Americana. Not necessarily even the genre of music, just when we say Americana, that's where I grew up.
Yeah. So do you identify with that sensibility of Americana compared to the genre itself, right? Because I feel like with your earlier albums, it's more traditional country, not only in delivery, but especially instrumentation, which is great and fun. And then you have this awesome growth and change subtly over the years. So how do you view your music style in that perspective? Like, do you feel like you started country and now are more Americana? Like, what does it mean to you? It's always kind of a wiggle room of this genre.
Yeah, well, and it does. I do feel like more than ever, too, the two genres are really melding together, which I love. But yeah, I definitely started out more country. And I think what happened to me was that Americana really embraced me in a way that country didn't completely, as far as the commercial lane. And so because of that, I leaned into the more Americana parts of what I did. And that was when I made this last record with Brandy Carlisle, she actually approached me about us doing a full album. And one of the things, other than I just loved working with her, that really drew me in was she said, I feel like you straddle this line between country and Americana. And if I produce your record, I can help pull you over squarely into Americana, which I feel like is what happened and was pretty awesome. And I think it's just the things I've had to let go of a little bit, especially on these last two records, because I made this record with Brandy and I just made a record with Shooter Jennings that the first single will come out in September and the record will follow late January. But I've had to let go of things being perfect in the studio because that's a very Nashville country thing, to get everything just perfect. And Americana's looser. Same way with songwriting. There's a country songwriting discipline that I feel so lucky to have learned in and grew up in that Americana doesn't adhere to in a beautiful way. Because in that system, which is amazing, it can get formulaic though. And when I made my last record with Brandy, I always get about 24 songs that between myself and label and management, all feel like, oh, these are the songs. And then I'll have a producer, because I've never worked with a producer I wrote with. They've always been an outsider as far as songs. I'll have them help me narrow it down to, say, 10 or 12. And it's always interesting to me. I'll always have a few that, oh, these are must-haves for me. Help me fill in the blanks. The choices are always interesting to me. And Brandy's choices were really interesting to me. And I asked her, why did you choose the songs you chose? And she said, well, I thought they were all great songs, But I chose the songs that to me sounded like you wrote them in your bedroom and not a writing room. So when she said that, it reminded me, we all started writing songs because there was something we had to get out. And I've tried to approach it in the last couple of years a little more like that. Like, okay, don't try to impress writer X over here who you just think is so incredible. Just say what's on your heart. Don't be clever. So that's a massive difference, I feel like, between country and Americana. Americana doesn't lean on the clever.
Yeah.
It's really about the raw, dirty. I think Americana has dirt under their fingernails. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most helpful descriptions I've ever had of Americana. I think it is kind of that squishy middle, but I love the way you view it and how you're seeing it as like, this is my style where I need to return to myself and learn that it's a soft place to land again. And to kind of lean into perhaps your biggest song that exemplifies this, I want to talk about Dear Insecurity. A lot more of America got to know you after the 2024 Grammys when you did that performance, and you also were awarded Best Americana Performance and also won Song of the Year at the Americana Honors and Awards. So how did that song mark perhaps a new distinct chapter for you, and that this is my latest iteration of myself fully leaning into Americana, and what songs that work for me?
Oh, well, thank you. That's a great question. You know, I think I've always felt like one of my gifts is that I can really speak to human truths. And I think what Dear Insecurity did was that spoke to my human truth. Like everything in there. I mean, I don't have any insecurity about my lips. That part, like a lot of people have said to me, I've never thought you had thin lips. I'm like, oh, I don't either. Most of the rest of that, like, is so true for me. And it came from a really true place. I was on my way to a writing appointment and someone had really hurt my feelings. And I had to remind myself of what a really good friend of mine always says, which is insecurity is the ugliest human emotion. And I had to think, okay, well, you know what that person just did and said that hurt me, it's because they're insecure. And so it made me start thinking about my own insecurities on the way to that write. And when I got there, I wrote that song with a great songwriter, Michael Pollack. And I said, I have an idea. How would you feel about if we wrote a song that was a letter to insecurity? And he started playing that opening piano thing. And I just started singing, Dear Insecurity. You know, it just sort of fell out. And I think it's because there was so much truth in it.
Oh, insecurity. You show up in my mirror, point out the worst in me.
So for me, I really challenge myself to sing things that are the truth. In a story song, that's never hard because you're telling a story. But sometimes in a first-person song, it does get a little harder. But I think that that's where we connect with an audience. Because if I feel that, a couple million other people feel it.
You're careless and you're cruel and oh, you're mindless. Maybe you could try a little kindness.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it still continues to resonate with people. We can all identify with multiple things in that song. And I want to talk about a Milwaukee connection to this song, at least at first, with your Grammy performance, because Sister Strings performed with you on that. And I know you've worked and toured with them, and we are happy to call them, our own. And it's so amazing to see all the work they're doing now and how they're growing. So what was it like for you to work with them and to keep working with them?
Well, for starters, they also played on that record. That's them. They're part of that.
I was going to ask if She Smoked in the House was them opening.
It is.
Yes, that sounded like them. Yeah.
It's them and a couple of other players. And so for starters, I love Shanti and Monique. I mean, as people, I love them. When they've been on the road with me, when they leave, it's a big letdown because they just are joyful and they're amazing. And they can have fun and still be pros. They're never late. They're never not great. I love working with them. In fact, I had them come in on this new record that we're in the mastering process of, and they actually have a feature on it, which is real exciting to me. Not only are they supremely talented and entertaining people, they're so unique. And the fact that they play classical music, they're classically trained and they're playing classical instruments, but they're playing popular music with those instruments, and they have such a cool look. I think that they will bring so many people into the classical music world, which a lot of times I think younger people don't think is cool. But when they see them playing it with the way they're dressed and their hair and just how cool they are, it becomes really cool.
Absolutely would agree. Well, I'm very much looking forward to seeing you in Milwaukee on the 22nd. But for today, Brandy Clark, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with me.
Thank you. This was great.
The good nights don't have rainy blue eyes that wreck me without warning.
Brandy Clark is a singer, songwriter, and Grammy Award-winning musician. She joined me ahead of her upcoming show at the Argo on June 22nd. You can listen to our full conversation where we talk more about her songwriting and collaborations at WUWM.com.
But the best ones do, and the good songs don't get stuck inside my head long after they're over. They don't sound like Lower Broadway, your head on my shoulder.
And that wraps up today's Lake Effect. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. If you've missed any of the show this week, you can find all of our conversations at WUWM.com. If you'd like to take the show on the go, just download the Lake Effect podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Tomorrow on Lake Effect, we'll explore whether there's political will to fix Milwaukee's racial achievement gaps. Thank you so much for joining us today, right here on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.